And we're live. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Today, I am broadcasting from the Social Media Day Jacksonville Facebook fan page. My name is Danny Monson, and I am this year's speaker coordinator for this amazing event. But let me tell you, today we have a special guest, Jay Owen. I wanted to bring Jay on this live feed because Jay has a ton of insight when it comes to growing a business from scratch, not only for a year, for 5 years, but for the long game. So he's going to share with us a little bit about how he's done that. Jay has a marketing agency here in St. Augustine in Northeast Florida that he has grown exponentially since he was 17 years old. But let me stop and let Jay share that story. Why don't you share a little bit about that, Jay? Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Danny, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. Really excited about Social Media Day and love being able to help other people grow businesses. That's kind of my thing. I love the idea of helping people grow business over time. And so I did start Design Extensions when I was 17, which was about 20 years ago. And we've grown every single year since the very beginning. So from day one, the very first year we were in business, it's funny, our total revenue the first year was about $5,000. And we've done millions of dollars since then in sales. So it's pretty fun to kind of look back over time and see how that's grown year over year over year, especially with things change. When we first started Design Extension, social media wasn't even a thing, didn't exist. And now it's so prevalent, it's every single day. And so learning to help people adapt and change over time is a really big deal for me. And that's going to be the topic of my talk at Social Media Day this summer.
Wow, amazing. So that was one of my next questions, Jay. The communications and marketing space has evolved so rapidly, especially the last decade. If I had a chance to ask you just a few tips, a few insights on how you've been able to survive and pivot accordingly so that you remain competitive, so that your brand remains relevant, so that your clients are also understanding as business and marketing evolves, that you have been able to keep them on board.
Well, I think that what you talked about there, being able to pivot and adjust over time, is really important. If you look at a lot of businesses that were really successful years ago, I think the biggest example is probably Blockbuster Video. You think about most of us my age spent a lot of time walking circles around a Blockbuster trying to pick out the right VHS and then eventually pick out the right DVD. And you pull that cover back and there were no copies there. And our kids won't even know what that's like. And then Netflix came along and Netflix was this, people forget even today, Netflix was a DVD delivery service.
Yeah.
And now they're known for their streaming media, but that's because they've learned to pivot over time. And a lot of people will say that Netflix put Blockbuster out of business, but I actually think Blockbuster put Blockbuster out of business. They weren't able to adjust as times changed, as technology changed, and as a result, they just couldn't keep up with things. And I think in any kind of business, whether it's working in social media or, running a gas station, it doesn't matter. You have to be able to adjust and change with time. And ultimately, it's all about what your end customer needs, wants, and desires. And if you're able to deliver a product or service that they need, want, and desire over time, you can keep growing. But if you're so stuck in, well, this is how we've always done it, then you're probably going to eventually lose. And that's what I always tell our team, is that if there's one thing that I really can't stand, it's the idea of, well, we've always done it this way, so that's why we're doing it this way. That's not a good reason, unless it's the best way to still do it. And if it is, then let's keep doing it. But most of the time, if we think about how we did things 5 years ago, they're totally different now. And I think perseverance is kind of the second thing that's really important. A lot of times I think people start something, and it's so easy to start something new these days that people think, it's just going to be great all the time. And they look at other people online, especially with social media. If you follow my Instagram feed, you'd think my life's 100% perfect all the time. And I can tell you that it's not. Like, things go bad all the time at work, at home. But learning to persevere and overcome those failures fail fast, fail often, learn from that and improve. I think that's a huge thing for lasting the test of time in business.
That's really valuable insight from someone who's been able to not just keep afloat, but grow this brand of yours, with design extensions, and now not even stopping there, but now tell us a little bit about you're writing a book and you have a podcast going on, and you have a select group of people that you invite on this podcast, right? So tell us a little bit about that, because I'm also interested in writing my own book eventually. So every chance I get to get in front of someone who's in the process or who's done it, I'm taking some notes. So why don't you share a little bit about that, Jay?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. Thanks, Danny. The podcast came about last year, and I went to an event last summer and saw a couple of people who I really respected speak. Simon Sinek was one of them. He's amazing. If you've not seen him, look him up online. I got to see John Maxwell, leadership legend, on
Yes.
stage live. And I watched these guys and I thought, man, I want to do what they do. Like, I want to help tons of people grow their businesses and be better leaders and be more successful. And then I started stepping back and asking the question, what am I doing today that's going to make that true tomorrow? And there wasn't a whole lot. Like, Design Extensions was growing as an agency, and we were doing better work than we'd ever done. And we were helping individual businesses, but not at a scale that I wanted to be able to achieve over time. And so the podcast was actually kind of after I started writing the book. So I thought about the book, and I thought, the book will give me a good platform to speak from and share ideas about. And so that was kind of where the book started out. And then I thought, well, I need something that's going to lead to the book. And so the podcast was started, I guess, probably last August, something like that. And the idea behind the podcast is called Building a Business That Lasts. And the idea behind it is to invite other business owners on the podcast who have been in business for 10 years or more. They could be in any variety of industries, but I want them to have had that, decade or longer experience, because statistics show that a lot of businesses fail after the first year. A lot of them fail after 5 years. But once you make it to that 10-year mark, usually you can make it as long as you want to. That's statistically how things work out. And so the podcast has been a great opportunity for me to connect with other business owners and have some opportunities to do some speaking engagements and things like that around the topic while I wrap up the book. Matter of fact, about the book, I've got something I could show you guys for the first time that I've not shown anybody else outside of the office. That's not true. My wife's seen it. We started working on a new cover design. This is not finished by any means. It's a rough draft, literally a piece of paper wrapped around another book. So here's the cover that we're working on. I don't know how well you can see it, but
let's lift it a little bit.
There we go.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, wow.
So that's exciting. A work in progress, and really excited about that. The book is really my story, but it's more than that. It's all the ideas that I think are really important to last the test of time. Because I think so often we live in a world that is really hurried and rushed, and we want things today. We want them right now. And the reality is that most good things take a little time. They take a little patience. And so this book is really the story of how do you grow something consistently year over year over year. Like we have with Design Extensions, we've made more revenue and more profit for 20 years in a row. And I think a lot of people want to know how to do that. And that's what I share in this book. And that's what I have other business owners share on the podcast, which is great.
That's amazing. So you're not only accumulating, your results and the fruit of your labor, but you are sharing it, with people who want to, copy your success, right? I mean, that's mentorship 101. Isn't that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, mentorship's a huge thing. And I've had so many people that I've had the opportunity to learn from and be taught by, whether they're people that I personally know and are actual, in-person mentors, or people that I would consider to be kind of business mentors, like somebody like John Maxwell. I don't know him personally, and we've not worked together personally, but I've read so much of his stuff. Yeah. It's helped train me over time and help mentor me even from afar. That's what good books are. Good books are good mentors.
Yes, absolutely. John C. Maxwell, one of my top 5 authors. I have a few of his writings and his audiobooks. I have his podcast. He has an app, a leadership development app that I listen to. Definitely love his work. So quick thing. So it's not always about business. It's not always about achieving results. It's not always about return investments and the latest, strategies. You caught my attention because you also give back in a way that the people that you help can never pay you back. And I'm a believer when it comes to, that type of work. And why don't you share a little bit about a recent trip that you had in Haiti, I believe it was?
Yeah, so I'm on the board for an organization. Their website address is foundationpsm.org. And it's an organization out of Milo, Haiti, which is kind of in the northern part of Haiti, very rural community up there. A good friend of mine started the organization. And I've never really honestly, before this, I did not have a big heart for international missions because I felt like there's so many people that need help right here in our own community. The idea of going outside of that was always hard for me. But once I actually went, this past trip was my third time going. I got to take our two oldest sons. I've got 5 kids. So I got to take our 2 oldest sons on this trip along with my wife. And it was just a great time to get involved in the community and be reminded of just honestly how much opportunity we all have. It's easy to get frustrated and aggravated with all the day-to-day stuff that we deal with. But the reality is that all of us who have had the opportunity to work here in America have drawn the lottery ticket. And when you see people in other communities who don't have those opportunities and they can't just pull themselves up by their bootstraps, it changes you, and it's changed me. And that's been a really powerful thing for me for sure.
Thank you for sharing. And I definitely wanted to highlight, that sort of work because it not only showcases, what you've done in the marketplace, but how, giving back is so important. Do you think that these kids in Haiti are complaining about the latest Facebook data breach? I don't think so. Right, Jay?
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting when I was there with our 2 sons because they're technology loving Americans like everybody else, and they like their iPads and their Xbox and all that. But they didn't want to leave. And they had this renewed reality for what that interpersonal connection is all about. And that's not to harp on social media. I love social media. I'm all over Instagram and Facebook and everything else. But I think that there's an opportunity for Facebook and Instagram and anything else to kind of merge regular reality with online reality. I think the danger comes when we just sit behind the screen all the time and we're not out there in the community and connecting with people. But I think the beauty of social media is that it gives us the opportunity to connect with more people in more ways and then connect with them in real life outside of social media. Not that social media is not real life, but sometimes it's not. And I think that is a really, really powerful tool and opportunity that we all have as long as we don't abuse it.
Great insight, Jay. Before I let you go, and last but not least, you're going to be speaking at Social Media Day Jacksonville here at the end of June. It's going to be a 2-day conference, and I'm excited to hear your talk. Can you give us a little bit of a glimpse on your talk and maybe a tip on how a father of 5 is making it happen? I think a lot of us who are not yet dads or who are dads would want to take some notes there.
Sure. So 2 things: Social Media Day and how do you run a business with being a father of 5. I'm super excited about Social Media Day coming up this summer in Jacksonville. I mean, if you've not looked at the speaker lineup, it's really incredible. And I'm certainly not talking about myself. Some of the folks on this stage are really some of the most knowledgeable people in the industry, and they're going to give some real techniques and tactics on how to be successful and grow on social media. And I'm just excited to be there myself. But with my talk, what I'm going to be talking about is an area where I think I have a lot of experience, and that is how do you handle the rapidly changing world of social media? Because the reality is, a year and a half ago, you could get exposure on Facebook for like $1, a lot of exposure for a very little bit amount of money. And their cost per click have increased like 43% in the last year. I mean, that's a huge number. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with new platforms that pop up? How do you deal with platforms that are dying off? For a while there, I think we all thought Snapchat was going to like become the new king, and then they kind of came back off that hill a little bit. And there's all those changes. So how do you deal with that without being stressed out, worn out, and ready to quit? That's going to be the focus of my talk, and I'm really excited to share some ideas around that. And then the last question you asked was about how do I kind of manage everything and keep things going while also being a father of 5. And the primary answer to that is because I have a really good wife. She is just amazing with the kids. She homeschools them. Her work is way, way harder than mine on a daily basis. So the fact that I have a really good partner in life and a great spouse is really, really helpful. But the other thing is just understanding where my boundaries are and understanding that my boundaries might be different than your boundaries. And, we hear this constant talk about hustle, and we watch people like Gary Vee, who I love, so much great stuff from Gary Vee, but his lifestyle right now is not for me. And that's okay. And I think sometimes we need people to tell us that just because somebody else is running from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. doesn't mean that we have to. Look, at 5 o'clock in the day, I'm done. I'm at home for dinner. And that's the boundary that I've set most of the time. Sometimes I travel, sometimes I've got something going on, but most of the time I'm at home for dinner. And that's an expectation and a boundary that I've set for me. But you've got to understand what that is. But that's been a big thing. And then communication, like good communication with my kids, good communication with my wife, primarily because my kids are young anyway, is vital to that. Because if she understands what's going on and where I'm at with business, and I've communicated that really clearly, she's going to be a lot more flexible than I just all of a sudden say, oh, by the way, I'm gone for the next 6 days. So I think communication, whether it's with a spouse, with team members, with clients, that is probably the number one stumbling block. And it sounds cliche, but it's true.
Definitely taking a lot of notes from you, Jay. I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to be working on bringing more speakers for Social Media Day Jacksonville as we are nearing the 10th Sunday before the actual conference. Jenny and I, my wife Jenny and I, were doing a countdown on how many weeks we have or weekends we have before the conference. And so we're definitely going to be bringing you more relevant content with not only the speakers and what they do professionally, but they're going to be sharing a little bit behind the story of how they got there through this live coverage. So thank you guys for joining us. Thank you so much, Jay. I appreciate you having some fun here with us on Be Live, and I'll catch you on the next video.
Thanks, Danny. Have a great one.
Take care.
Bye.